The crime boss was stepping out of his black Mercedes when something unusual caught his attention. Not a gun. Not a threat. A crumpled €5 note, held up by the smallest, shakiest hands he'd ever seen. The little girl standing before him had messy hair, worn-out shoes, and tears streaming down her face. "Please," she whispered. "This is all I have." His men moved instantly, too close, too fast. But Luca Romano raised his hand, stopping them cold. Because what this child was about to ask would shake the very foundation of Rome's underworld. But before we dive into this incredible true story of courage and unexpected kindness, do me a quick favor. Smash that subscribe button right now and hit the bell so you never miss stories like this. And drop a comment below telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you all. Trust me, what happens next will absolutely blow your mind. You won't want to miss a single moment. Now, let's get started. Luca Romano had been running Rome's Trastevere district for 15 years. His name alone was enough to make grown men look the other way. He'd built his empire on two unbreakable rules. Keep your word and never, ever involve children in business. That Tuesday evening started like any other. Luca was leaving his restaurant, Osteria Bella, after collecting protection money from the local shopkeepers. His black Mercedes waited at the curb, engine purring softly, while his two bodyguards, Paolo and Nico, stood like stone statues at the door. Everyone in the neighborhood knew the routine. When Luca emerged at 8:30, people found somewhere else to be. Shopkeepers locked their doors. Mothers called their children inside. The smart ones crossed the street before he even noticed them. But this little girl didn't cross the street. She didn't run away. She walked straight toward him with a crumpled €5 note clutched in her tiny fist. Luca had seen desperate people before. Men who owed money they couldn't pay. Business owners behind on their fees. Gamblers who'd bet everything on the wrong horse. But this was different. This child wasn't desperate the way adults get desperate. She was determined, like she'd rehearsed this moment 100 times in her mind. Her clothes were clean but old, patched where they'd torn. Her sneakers had holes near the toes. But her eyes held something Luca rarely saw anymore. Pure, unwavering hope. "What's your name?" he asked, crouching down to her level. His men shifted nervously behind him, hands moving toward their jackets. They'd never seen their boss take this much time with anyone, let alone a child. "Elena," she whispered. "Elena Bianchi. How old are you, Elena?" 7. Almost 8. Luca glanced at Paolo, who gave a slight shrug. In their world, children meant complications. Witnesses. Questions. Heat from the police that nobody wanted. "Where are your parents?" Luca asked gently. That's when the tears started. Not dramatic sobbing, but quiet tears rolling down her cheeks while she fought to keep talking. "My mama's gone," she said. "They took her 3 days ago." Luca felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Who took her?" Elena looked over her shoulder, scanning the empty street like she expected someone to jump out of the shadows. "The bad men. They said she owed them money, but we don't have any money. We don't have anything except this." She held up the €5 note again, worn soft from being folded and unfolded countless times. Probably her lunch money for the week. "These bad men," Luca said carefully. "What did they look like?" "Big. Scary. One had a tattoo on his neck that looked like a scorpion. Another had gold teeth. They drove a white van with no windows." Luca's jaw tightened. He knew exactly who she was describing. The Russo brothers had been moving into his territory for months, pushing drugs, running protection rackets. But kidnapping someone's mother? That was crossing every line. "Elena, where's your father?" "He died last year. Construction accident." She said it matter-of-factly, like she'd practiced explaining this to adults who always asked uncomfortable questions. "It's just me and Mama now." "Was just me and Mama." Paolo stepped forward. "Boss, we should go. Someone might see." Luca silenced him with a look. In 15 years of running crews and managing territory, he developed rules that kept him alive and out of prison. Rule number 1, never get emotional about business. Rule number 2, never trust anyone completely. Rule number 3, never, ever get involved with children. But looking at Elena Bianchi clutching her €5 like it could buy miracles, Luca felt something shift inside his chest. "Elena, what exactly do you want me to do?" he asked. She took a deep breath, like she was about to jump off a cliff. "I want you to bring my mama home. I know you're important. I know people are scared of you. But I also know you help people sometimes." Luca raised an eyebrow. "Who told you that?" Mrs. DeLuca from the corner shop. She said when those other bad men tried to make her pay extra money, you made them go away. She said you protect people in the neighborhood. Luca almost smiled despite himself. Mrs. DeLuca had been paying him protection money for 5 years, but apparently she'd put her own spin on the arrangement. Elena, this isn't how these things work. You can't just walk up to people like me and ask for help. But I did, she said simply. And you're still here talking to me. That stopped him cold. She was right. Any other night, any other person, Luca would have been in his car and gone by now. The bad men said if I tell the police, they'll hurt Mama worse, Elena continued. They said if I tell anyone, they'll make sure I never see her again. But they didn't say I couldn't hire someone to help. Luca stared at this tiny girl who'd just used the word hire, like she was conducting business. You want to hire me? For €5. It's all I have. But I can get more. I can do chores or sell things or… Elena. Luca's voice was gentle but firm. €5 isn't enough for what you're asking. Her face crumpled, and for a moment she looked exactly like what she was, a terrified 7-year-old whose world had fallen apart. Please, she whispered. She's all I have. If something happens to her, I'll be all alone. And I don't know what to do when I'm alone. Luca looked at that €5 note in his hand, then back at Elena's tear-streaked face. In his line of work, emotions were weaknesses that got you killed or arrested. But listening to this child talk about being alone, something inside him cracked. Then Elena asked the question that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Mr. Luca, she said softly, if you help me, will you get hurt? When was the last time someone had worried about his safety? His own men followed him out of loyalty and fear, but they knew the risks. This little girl was asking if he'd be okay. I'll be fine, he said quietly. But Elena, if I do this, if I help you get your mama back, you can never tell anyone. Not the police, not your teachers, not your friends. Do you understand? Elena nodded so hard her hair bounced. I promise. I swear on Mama's life. Luca stood up slowly, his knees protesting. At 45, he was feeling every year he'd spent on these streets. But looking down at Elena Bianchi, he felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Purpose. Paolo, he said without turning around. Call Nico. Tell him to bring the car around back. And get on the radio. I want every crew member we have on standby. Full weapons. Boss, Paolo said carefully. We're talking about hitting the Russos over a kid? Luca turned, and both men took an involuntary step back. They'd seen their boss angry before, but this was different. This was personal. We're talking about cleaning up our neighborhood, Luca said quietly. The Russos have been pushing boundaries for months. Taking somebody's mother crosses every line we have. He looked back down at Elena. I need you to do something very brave. Can you handle brave? Elena nodded. I need you to go to Mrs. DeLuca's shop. Tell her Luca sent you, and you need to stay there until I come get you. Don't leave for any reason. Don't talk to anyone except Mrs. DeLuca. Can you do that? You're really going to help me? Elena's voice was barely a whisper. Luca knelt down one more time and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. Elena, I give you my word. Your mama will be home tonight. Fresh tears flowed down her cheeks, but these were different. Relief. Hope. Gratitude. Thank you, she sobbed. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet, Luca said, standing up. Thank me when you're having breakfast with your mama tomorrow morning. As Elena started walking toward the corner shop, she stopped and turned back. Mr. Luca, what if they come looking for me? Luca smiled, and for the first time in years, it reached his eyes. Then they'll have to go through me first. As Elena disappeared into the corner shop, Luca pulled out his phone and started making calls. The Russo brothers had made a fatal mistake. They'd hurt a child in his territory. They'd taken someone's mother. They'd pushed too far. Nico, it's me, Luca said into his phone. Round up everyone. Tonight we go to war. Within 20 minutes, Luca's entire operation was in motion. Phone calls went out across Rome like ripples in dark water. Crews from the docks, enforcers from the city center, specialists who handled problems that required permanent solutions. By 9:15, 37 men had assembled in the back room of Osteria Bella. These weren't ordinary criminals. Luca had handpicked every single one based on absolute loyalty and the ability to handle business without creating unnecessary heat. Listen up, Luca said, standing at the head of a long table covered with maps and weapons. The Russo brothers have been testing us for months. Tonight, they crossed a line that doesn't exist. He placed a photo of Elena on the table. Several men shifted uncomfortably. Children changed everything in their world. 7 years old. Mother taken 3 days ago. The Russos are demanding 20,000 euros her dead father supposedly owed them. But this isn't about money. It's about respect. It's about the fact that these animals think they can operate in our neighborhood without consequences. Paolo cleared his throat. Boss, intelligence says they're holed up in that warehouse complex by the river. The one with all the shipping containers. How many? Luca asked. 12, maybe 15. Armed but sloppy. They're not expecting trouble. Good. Luca's voice was ice-cold steel. Here's how this works. We go in quiet. We get the woman out alive. Anyone who touched her doesn't walk out. Nico, Luca's oldest lieutenant, spoke up. What about witnesses? Other victims they might have. We get everyone out. Clean house completely. The men nodded. They'd done this before, but never for reasons like this. Usually it was business, territory disputes, unpaid debts. This felt different. Personal. Luca pulled out his phone and showed them a photo he'd received 10 minutes earlier. A woman tied to a chair in what looked like a shipping container. Chiara Bianchi. Elena's mother. Alive but terrified. They sent this thinking it would scare me into paying ransom, Luca said quietly. They were wrong. As his men prepared their equipment, Luca stepped outside into the cool night air. Mrs. De Luca's store was still lit up, and he could see Elena sitting behind the counter, probably trying to stay awake. His phone buzzed. Another message from the Russos. This time a video. Luca watched Chiara trying to speak into the camera, her voice barely audible. Tell Elena I love her. Tell her to be brave. Tell her I'm sorry I couldn't protect her better. Luca deleted the video immediately. Some things were too cruel to exist. Boss, Paolo appeared beside him. Everything's ready. We can be there in 15 minutes. Change of plans, Luca said. I want to be there in 10. The convoy moved through Rome like ghosts. 3 black SUVs, windows tinted, taking side streets and avoiding cameras. The warehouse district was exactly what you'd expect. Abandoned buildings, broken streetlights, the kind of place where screaming wouldn't bring help. Luca's SUV pulled up 2 blocks away. Through binoculars, he could see lights in 3 different containers. Guards walking patrol routes casually, like they were bored. Nico's team in position, came the voice through his earpiece. North side secured. Paolo here. South entrance covered. 2 guards eliminated quietly. Luca checked his weapon one final time. A custom pistol he'd carried for 8 years. Never missed what he aimed at. All teams go. They moved like shadows. The first guard went down before he could draw his weapon. The second never got the chance to use his radio. By the time Luca reached the first container, 6 Russo soldiers were neutralized. Inside, they found what Luca expected but hoped they wouldn't. Evidence of human trafficking on a massive scale. Photos, documents, ledgers showing dozens of transactions. Boss, Paolo's voice crackled through the earpiece. Found her. Container 7. She's alive but barely conscious. They drugged her. Anyone with her? 3 guards. Not anymore. Luca felt something loosen in his chest. Chiara was alive. He could keep his promise to Elena. Nico, what's your status? Container 12. Boss, you need to see this. They've got 4 other women here. All in bad shape. Luca closed his eyes briefly. The Russos weren't just running a kidnapping operation. They were trafficking women. In his territory. Under his nose. But here's what nobody knew. Here's the twist that would change everything. Luca had known about the Russo operation for 3 weeks. He'd been watching them, building evidence, waiting for the right moment to strike. But he couldn't move without a reason that his other rivals would understand. Going to war over territory was expected. Going to war over morality? That made you look weak. Then Elena Bianchi walked up to him with €5 and gave him exactly what he needed. A justification wrapped in innocence. The walk to Container 15 felt like a funeral march. The Russo brothers were exactly what Luca expected. Dmitri, the older one, was counting money. Alexei, the younger brother, was on the phone. Both reached for weapons when Luca's team breached the container. Neither made it. Luca Romano, Dmitri said, hands rising slowly. We can work this out. Business is business. You're right, Luca replied calmly. Business is business. And your business just ended. The woman, she's worth 20,000 to us. We split it 60-40. You get the bigger cut. Luca stepped closer, and that's when he revealed the truth. I've known about your operation for 3 weeks, he said quietly. Every woman you've taken. Every container you've used. Every route you've planned. I've been watching everything. The brothers' faces went pale. You see, I needed a reason to end you that wouldn't start a war with the other families. Killing you over territory? That's messy. But tonight, a 7-year-old girl gave me something better. She gave me moral justification. You used the kid? Alexei stammered. No, Luca said coldly. You did. You took her mother. You threatened a child. You gave me exactly what I needed, a reason everyone will understand. Nobody protects men who hurt children. Not even criminals. What happened next took exactly 90 seconds. When it was over, the Russo brothers' operation was permanently closed. Luca walked back to Container 7, where Paolo was helping Chiara to her feet. She was weak, disoriented, but alive. Who are you? She whispered. I'm a friend of your daughter's, Luca said gently. Elena's waiting for you. She's been very brave. As they walked through the container yard, Chiara looked around at the aftermath. She was smart enough to understand what had happened. You killed people for us, she said quietly. I protected my neighborhood, Luca corrected. There's a difference. Why? Luca stopped and looked at this woman who'd survived 3 days of hell because her daughter refused to give up. Because your daughter reminded me that power without purpose is just violence. And tonight, I got to have a purpose. Mrs. DeLuca's store had never felt so bright. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead while Elena sat behind the counter, her small legs swinging back and forth from a chair that was too tall for her. She'd been staring at the door for what felt like forever, jumping every time someone walked past on the sidewalk. Mrs. DeLuca kept offering her crackers and juice boxes, but Elena's stomach was twisted too tight to eat anything. She just wanted her mama. She wanted this nightmare to be over. When the door chimed at midnight, Elena's heart nearly stopped. But instead of the bad men with gold teeth and scorpion tattoos, Luca Romano walked through the entrance with the most beautiful sight she'd ever seen. Her mother. Mama! Elena launched herself off the chair and ran faster than she'd ever run in her life. Chiara Bianchi caught her daughter and held her so tight it hurt. But Elena didn't care. She breathed in her mother's familiar smell, lavender soap, and the vanilla perfume she wore on special occasions. Baby, oh my baby, Chiara whispered, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I left you alone. I wasn't alone, Elena said, her voice muffled against her mother's shoulder. Mr. Luca helped me, just like I knew he would. Chiara looked up at Luca, who stood quietly by the door with Paolo. Mrs. DeLuca had retreated to the back of the store, giving them privacy. How can I ever thank you? Chiara asked. Luca reached into his pocket and pulled out the crumpled 5-euro note Elena had given him. He walked over and gently placed it in Elena's small hand. Your payment's been refunded, he said with a slight smile. Consider the job completed at no charge. Elena looked down at the money, then back up at Luca. But I hired you. That was our deal. You gave me something worth more than money tonight, kid. What? Luca knelt down to Elena's level one last time. You reminded me why I do what I do. Sometimes we forget that protecting people isn't just about business. Sometimes it's about doing what's right because it's right. Elena carefully folded the 5-euro note and put it in her pocket. Will the bad men come back? No, Luca said with absolute certainty. They won't be bothering anyone ever again. Chiara understood what that meant, but she didn't ask for details. Some questions were better left unanswered. What happens now? She asked. Luca stood up, his expression serious. You go home. You lock your doors. You live your life. But Chiara, if anyone ever threatens you or Elena again, you call this number. He handed her a simple business card with just a phone number printed on it. Day or night. No questions asked. I can't pay you if something happens again, Chiara said quietly. You don't need to. Elena's already paid for a lifetime of protection. Paolo stepped forward. Boss, we should go. Luca nodded, then looked back at Elena. You take care of your mama, okay? And Elena, remember what you learned tonight. Sometimes the right person will help you, even when the world feels scary. You just have to be brave enough to ask. I will, Elena promised solemnly. As Luca and Paolo headed toward the door, Elena called out. Mr. Luca? He turned back. Are you a good guy or a bad guy? Luca paused, considering the question. In his world, the lines between good and bad weren't always clear. He'd done terrible things to terrible people. He'd broken laws, hurt enemies, operated outside society's rules for 15 years. But tonight, he'd saved a mother and daughter. He'd kept a promise to a 7-year-old girl who believed in him when she had nowhere else to turn. "I'm whatever I need to be," he said finally. "Tonight, I got to be the good guy." 3 months later, Luca was having dinner at Osteria Bella when Mrs. De Luca walked in with a small envelope. Inside was a hand-drawn picture of a family, stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. At the bottom, in careful 7-year-old handwriting, it read, "Thank you, Mr. Luca. Love, Elena and Mama." Luca never framed awards or newspaper clippings. But that drawing went up on his office wall, right next to the map of his territory. Because sometimes the most dangerous man in the neighborhood needs to remember what he's really protecting. Elena Bianchi grew up safe. She graduated high school, went to university, became a teacher. Every year on the anniversary of that night, she'd leave a small envelope at Osteria Bella restaurant. Always the same thing, a €5 note and a handwritten message. For the next kid who needs help. Luca kept every single one in a locked drawer in his office. 37 envelopes over the years. 37 reminders that power could be used for something more than fear. And here's the beautiful part. The part that shows how one act of kindness can ripple through time. Luca started a secret fund with those €5 notes. Every time Elena left one, he matched it with €1,000. Over the years, that fund grew. And whenever someone in the neighborhood faced the kind of desperation that Elena had faced, impossible debts, dangerous threats, nowhere to turn, Luca helped them. Quietly, anonymously, without expectation of repayment. The neighborhood changed. It became known not just as Luca Romano's territory, but as a place where people looked out for each other, where the strong protected the weak, where even the most feared man in Rome remembered that courage doesn't come from power, it comes from hope. On Elena's 18th birthday, a story about a little girl who was brave enough to ask for help, about a dangerous man who chose kindness over cruelty, about how sometimes the smallest gesture, a crumpled bill, a whispered plea, a moment of courage can change everything. Because that's the thing about kindness. It doesn't matter how big you are, how much money you have, or how many people fear your name. Sometimes the bravest person in the room is a 7-year-old girl with €5 and hope. And sometimes that's exactly what the world needs to remember. It can be better. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And don't forget, kindness costs nothing, but it's worth everything. See you in the next one. Red Heart.